Hi, and welcome to the Intellect's Cove. My name is Colin Fairley. I'm a pragmatist philosopher and political theorist. And in today's video, I'm going to be addressing the question of why did I decide to create this channel now? At the time of recording this, it's 2026. So in answering that question, I want to draw on a number of considerations on the professional front, on the personal front, and culturally. All three of these factors both explain why in the past I didn't create it sooner, but also why at this particular time in my life I decided now I'm going to make the leap and create the YouTube channel. If you had asked me a few years ago if I would ever create a YouTube channel, the answer would have been an adamant no. So when I explained the factors that led me to change my mind just in the last few months, that will bring together a variety of these considerations. So I'd like to start first by reflecting on why I didn't do this channel, in the past. And I'm going to start first with professional considerations, which really were a major consideration in why I didn't create this channel sooner. First, there's the timeline by which I became an academic. When I started as an undergraduate in 1990, there was no internet. My BA thesis, I remember doing it on a typewriter. During my MA in the mid-90s, the internet came into existence. But even by the time I finished my PhD, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook or Twitter or any social media. I was the last in a generation of pre-digital scholars. And so this definitely created a challenge in terms of thinking about social media as part of the knowledge mobilization strategy. There were serious careerist priorities that meant that posting on YouTube was low down the list when I became an assistant professor. Publish or perish is a reality for academics, and so I prioritized trying to get books published, trying to get academic journals published, and that was a pretty, all-consuming focus for the first 20 years of my career, and I wasn't going to entertain the prospect of pursuing something that would detract a lot of time and attention away from that mission of academic publishing. Academic publishing is critical to getting a job and then to keeping that job and getting promotion. Another factor on the professional front, and this links up with one of the intellectual virtues that I really want to focus on in this channel, is intellectual humility. So before a scholar can engage in knowledge mobilization, they actually have to acquire some knowledge. And I would have said for at least the first 20 years of my career that I didn't possess a knowledge that I would want to be mobilizing it in a forum such as YouTube. So I just focused on developing and refining the particular areas of expertise that I was developing, but I think I've reached a stage now where I have some confidence, though still some caution, in terms of sticking my neck out in a public forum and addressing the issues that I'm going to address here. So that was another kind of professional norm. I see lots of YouTubers pontificating on topics that perhaps they're not as informed on as they believe, and so I didn't want to be in that category myself. Which leads to the question of why now? What has changed over the past number of years that have led me to reconsider, or at least to conceptualize creating a YouTube channel as something I would actually have an interest in pursuing? And I'm going to identify two factors on the professional front. The first was in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. I had to shift all of my teaching from in-person large lectures to online. And I can tell you that when this prospect arose, I was adamantly opposed to this. I was not enthusiastic about teaching online, but over the course of 2 years, I developed more than 100 online videos for my students, and I became somewhat Zen Buddhist in my attitude towards it. My attitude was, well, this is the circumstance. And I actually came to see that doing online content actually had novel pedagogical value. And so it actually helped me develop as a scholar. And in fact, as I shifted most of my history of political thought course to online content, it accelerated the progress that I made in finishing a textbook on classics of political thought for today, something I'll be addressing in future videos. So that was the first thing. The COVID-19 pandemic led to me creating 100 online videos. It was more enjoyable than I thought it would be, and it had more serious pedagogical value than I would have estimated before I had created any. Another consideration is just finishing the latest book that is about to come out in the summer of 2026. That was a major catalyst in me deciding to create a YouTube channel. This is Aging and the Ethics of Longevity Science. And I knew I wanted to create some online videos on each of these chapters, but I wasn't certain about where I would actually post them. I could have posted them on my web page. And so I thought, why don't I actually take the leap and create a YouTube channel where I can share those videos? And in thinking through that, I realized I'd actually like to create a channel where I could talk about a broader range of issues, not simply that book. But the book was certainly the proximate causation of the proximate cause of me creating this YouTube channel. Okay, so there's also a range of personal considerations that created resistance over many years for even conceiving of pursuing something like this YouTube channel. All right, I have 3 children. They're now all adults, but for many years, any time that I was not working was consumed by taking them to their sports activities. I was heavily invested in raising and rearing of my children. I knew it's a time-limited period of time that they quickly grow up, and so I didn't want to divert my attention and energy from investing in my children with something that was not that would be seen as extraneous to my professional career obligations. So having a family was a major consideration. When I had a young family, it simply wasn't feasible for me to take on something like creating regular online content. But now that they're all adults, I find myself with a little bit more discretionary time and energy. And so that also played into the decision to create the YouTube channel now. Another factor on the personal front is that I actually am somewhat of a dinosaur. I mean, here I am on social media. I do have a cell phone, but I didn't get a cell phone until into my early 40s. And I have a lot of disdain for the interconnectivity, of the hyper interconnectivity of the contemporary world. So the thought of creating online lectures is appealing to me, but not spending more time sucked into my phone and messaging and kind of using up a lot of time and mental energy invested in a phone. So I had apprehensions, and I still do, about this component of creating this channel. And the spirit by which I come here is to spend vast majority of the time creating online content, and then, there's an audience grows, I invite people to comment on what they hear in the videos, but primarily I want them to go out into the real world and connect with people and have conversations about the topics that we address in the videos. Another development on the personal front is that back in 2018, I created a philosophy meetup group, which has over 100 members, and I organized about over 250 in-person events during that 8-year period of time. And that really opened my eyes to the value of pushing my comfort level in terms of the venues by which I bring philosophy and political theory. And so connecting in person with community members on these topics was part of my own intellectual development, and it gave me the insight that actually pushing the envelope on what I was comfortable with serves my own intellectual development. And so I applied that same insight to creating this YouTube channel. That while initially there may be some uncertainty about how it's going to play out, why not just jump into it and see where it goes? All right, now I want to address some cultural developments that proved to be a catalyst in pushing me in 2026 to create this channel. And the first one is just the polarization, the political polarization that at least I perceive to be amplified in the last number of years between those on the left and the right. And I think that I've seen this affect familial and friendship relationships. And I think it's important that there be a voice, which I hope I'm amplifying in the Intellect's Cove, to help navigate through this polarization, to emphasize an empathetic understanding of the different perspectives people take on political and ethical issues, and move beyond the demonization of those who hold opposing viewpoints. So I think because of political polarization, a YouTube channel is dedicated to curiosity and humility and cognitive flexibility can help be a kind of a medication to reduce our tendency to simplistically view things in a dichotomous way that amplifies political polarization. So the political polarization of the contemporary world was definitely a factor in making me, it was definitely a factor in motivating me to create this channel, to try to help transcend that cultural tendency. And finally, artificial intelligence. The other cultural development of the last few years is the rapid progression of artificial intelligence. I have somewhat of an agnostic view about its potential benefits and drawbacks and harms, but I certainly believe that it's important that we take seriously the intellectual development of humans. I certainly share some of the apprehensions people have that the more we rely on AI, we're going to be undermining some of our own intellectual development. Here's a snapshot of the most recent Pew report on people's attitudes towards AI in terms of its potential impact on creativity and meaningful relationships. So, more than half of Americans think that AI is going to reduce our ability to think creatively and to make difficult decisions. Whether or not that's actually reality, I think, is a separate question. But the idea of the Intellect's Cove is to provide, a human-created forum and hopefully a philosopher who's engaged seriously in the intellectual development of their audience, so that we can at least, fend off some of the potential corrosive elements of relying on AI for us to think through important issues. So the political polarization of today and the rise of new technologies like AI motivated me to pursue this channel as a form of knowledge mobilization that seeks to bring to a larger audience the virtues of the mind that I emphasized in a previous video of curiosity, humility, and cognitive flexibility. And those are the reasons why in 2026 I decided, after many years of resistance, to take the leap and create this YouTube channel, and I hope you find something of value here.